What's good, everyone? This is Monaro and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to go over chapters 11 through 16. The only difference in this format will be that I won't have any readings for the chapters. I'll just be doing the summaries. So hope you enjoy. While waiting for Daenerys' wedding, Illyrio Mopatis explains that Drogo's Khalasar of 40,000 Dothraki warriors and their families and herds gathered outside the walls of Pentos have made the other magisters so uneasy that they have doubled the city guard. The Dothraki are eating everything in sight, and Illyrio thinks it would be best to have the marriage as soon as possible. Ser Jorah Mormont has offered and been accepted into the service of Daenerys' brother, Viserys. Viserys is impatient for Drogo to help him regain his throne. Illyrio explains to him that the Khal must take his new bride to Vaes Dothrak first, and then wait until the omens are favorable for war. Viserys complains at the delay despite Illyrio and Jorah cautioning patience. That night, Daenerys dreams of Viserys chasing and beating her and saying, "You woke the dragon." Then she turns to see a dragon in his place and wakes shaking with a fine sheen of sweat on her skin. Daenerys weds Khal Drogo under the open sky before 40,000 Dothraki warriors. The ceremonies begin at dawn and continue until dusk. Viserys, Illyrio, and Jorah are seated below Drogo and Daenerys at the feast, which grates on Viserys' pride, especially when food is first served to Daenerys and Drogo before being offered to him. Daenerys, with the forced smile her brother told her she should wear, eats little since her stomach is upset. She is seated only with her new husband, and they do not even share a common language, so there is nothing for her to do. Early on in the day, she sees the Dothraki men taking dancing women and mounting them in the open like animals. When two men grab the same woman, a fight to the death ensues. The survivor then takes another woman. Illyrio has told her that a Dothraki wedding without at least 3 deaths is considered dull. By the end of the day, a dozen men have died, obviously making it an exceptional wedding. Daenerys is consumed by fear of her hulking husband, with a stern, cruel face and a culture that is so different, and of her brother if she should fail him. As the sun sets, Daenerys receives her bride's gift. Viserys gives her 3 handmaids that cost him nothing, picked to teach her what she needs to know. Irri to teach her how to ride, Jiqui to teach her the Dothraki tongue, and DaaRia to teach her the arts of love. Ser Jorah, with an apology since it was all he could afford, gives her a stack of old books in the common tongue, and she thanks him with all her heart. Illyrio gives her fine silks and fabrics and 3 huge dragon eggs. One is green, one is cream-colored, and one is black with scarlet ripples and swirls. Illyrio tells her that they have turned to stone over the years. Khal Drogo's blood rider gives her the traditional 3 weapons, which she refuses with the traditional refusal and passes to her husband. Many other gifts come from other Dothraki. Last of all, Drogo brings forward his own bride gift, a fine gray filly. Drogo easily lifts her by the waist up to the saddle. She does not know what to do. Ser Jorah tells her to take the reins and ride. She is only a fair rider, having traveled almost exclusively by other means, but as she rides, she forgets her fears and eventually sends the horse into a gallop and even has it leap over a fire pit. She returns and tells Illyrio to tell her husband that he has given her the wind, and Drogo smiles. Then the sun sets and Drogo readies his horse. When Viserys warns her to please her husband, lest she will regret it, fear comes back to her. Drogo sets a fast pace, saying nothing. Daenerys tries to rid herself of her fear by remembering she is the blood of the dragon, and the dragon is never afraid. It is full dark when they stop at a grassy place beside a small stream. Drogo swings off his horse and lifts her down from hers. She feels fragile in her wedding silks. She begins to weep, but Drogo says no and wipes her tears away. She asks questions, but all Drogo says is no. He starts softly murmuring to her in Dothraki to soothe her. Drogo sets her down on a rock and sits facing her, then starts removing the bells from his hair, and Daenerys helps. Then he indicates that she should unbraid his hair, which takes a long time. Then Drogo undresses her with tenderness and caresses her until she is ready for him. When he bares her breasts, she covers herself with her hands, but Drogo gently pulls her hand away. After finishing undressing her, he watches her for a while. Then he begins to touch her face and her hair. It seems like hours to Daenerys before his hands go to her breasts. This makes Daenerys breathless, and when he seats her on his lap and asks, "No?" she moves his hands inside her and says, "Yes." Ned is woken before dawn to find his horse saddled and King Robert waiting. When the king claims to have urgent matters of state to discuss, Ned invites him to come inside. Robert refuses, claiming that the camp is full of ears, so Ned dresses up and mounts up. Robert sets a hard pace, and soon the pair leave the King's Road to ride through the Barrowlands. They do not stop until dawn, miles south of the main party. Exhilarated by the ride, Robert complains of the glacial pace of Cersei's wheelhouse and jokingly suggests that he and Ned run off to live as vagabond knights. Ned laughs and reminds Robert of their duties and that they are no longer the boys they once were. Robert jokes that Ned never was the boy he once was, then tries to recall the name of the woman Ned fathered Jon Snow with. Ned provides the name Wylla, but coldly refuses to say more about her. Robert finally gets to the business at hand, a message from the eunuch Varys, his master of whisperers, in King's Landing. Ned reads the message with some trepidation, thinking of Lysa Arryn and her terrible accusation, but finds that it concerns the wedding of Daenerys Targaryen to Khal Drogo. When Robert explains that the information has come from Ser Jorah Mormont, Ned takes offense, recalling Mormont as a fugitive who fled the king's justice after selling some poachers to a Tyroshi slaver in defiance of the law. The news of the wedding does not worry Ned, but Robert angrily suggests an assassination attempt. He is not surprised. Since the days of the rebellion, Robert has held a hatred for the Targaryens that seems a madness to Ned. Ned recalls the angry words that passed between Robert and himself when Tywin Lannister presented Robert with the corpses of Rhaegar Targaryen's wife Elia and children Aegon and Rhaenys as tokens of fealty. Ned called it murder, but Robert called it war. It took the death of Lyanna to reconcile them again. This time Ned keeps his temper, telling Robert that he is no Tywin Lannister to slaughter innocents. Robert angrily insists that Daenerys will not remain an innocent forever and will soon breed more dragon spawn to plague him. When Ned reiterates that killing a child would be unspeakable, Robert responds that what Aerys did to Ned's father and brother and what Rhaegar did to Lyanna were unspeakable. When Robert mentions that Drogo has 100,000 men in his horde, Ned insists that even 1,000,000 Dothraki are no threat to the realm without ships. Robert replies that ships can be found in the free cities and that many in the Seven Kingdoms, particularly in Dorne and the Reach, would not hesitate to join a Targaryen invasion. Despite this, Ned remains convinced that they would be able to drive the Dothraki back, emphasizing the importance of appointing a new Warden of the East. When Robert refuses to appoint Jon Arryn's son, Robert, Ned suggests the king's own brother Stannis. When Robert continues to be evasive, Ned quickly deduces that he has already promised the office to Jaime Lannister. Ned reminds Robert that Jaime already stands to succeed Tywin as Warden of the West, and that as Warden of both East and West, Jaime would control half of the realm's armies. Ned asks whether Jaime can be trusted. When Robert asks why he shouldn't trust Jaime, Ned reminds him that Jaime betrayed and killed the last king he was sworn to protect. To illustrate his point about Jaime Lannister, Ned describes to Robert how, after the Battle of the Trident, he followed Rhaegar's army back to King's Landing to find the city sacked by the Lannisters. Ned goes on to explain that upon entering the throne room, he found King Aerys dead on the floor and Jaime sitting on the Iron Throne. Although Jaime eventually rose to say that he was only keeping the uncomfortable thing warm for Robert, Ned insists that Jaime had no right to sit the throne. Robert finds this amusing and does not consider Jaime's great sin to be that bad. He gallops off, but Ned pauses, despairing of ever keeping Robert from making mistakes. He still believes he should be in Winterfell with his wife and Bran. Finally, resigned to not being able to be where he belongs, Ned follows his king. After a fortnight riding north from Winterfell with Benjen Stark, Jon Snow, and 2 of his own retainers, Tyrion is amazed by the enormous size of the north. Although he knows the maps of the region as well as anyone, the land itself is quite another thing. It has grown colder, quieter, and far lonelier the farther north they go, and the King's Road has narrowed to a wild track. 3 days out of Winterfell, the farmland has given way to the dense, dark forest of the Wolf's Wood. There they meet up with Yoren, a brother of the Night's Watch, accompanied by 2 peasant boys condemned to join the watch. That night, Tyrion notices Jon Snow looking at their new companions with dismay and feels sorry for the boy who has had such a hard life chosen for him. Tyrion feels less sympathy for Benjen Stark, who apparently shares his brother's distaste for Lannisters and seems intent on making Tyrion's journey north as uncomfortable as possible. However, Tyrion does take a small bit of revenge when he accepts a tattered old bearskin cloak from Benjen, a gift Tyrion thinks Benjen did not expect him to accept and is probably regretting. By the 18th night of their journey, the inns and settlements have long since disappeared, forcing the party to make camp. Being too small to help, Tyrion, as is his custom, goes away from the camp with a book about dragons, one of several brought with him from Winterfell. Tyrion has always been interested in dragons. He remembers seeking out the dragon skulls in King's Landing the first time he was there. He recalls having a torch with him when he discovered the skulls and having the sensation that they seemed to like it when he put his torch to them. There were 3 skulls much larger than the others, and one of the skulls could have swallowed a mammoth whole. Tyrion recalls that King Loren I, an ancestor of the Lannisters, had been about to defeat Aegon I Targaryen in battle when the Targaryens unleashed all 3 of their dragons and made short work of their opponents. As Tyrion reads, he is approached by Jon Snow, who asks why he reads so much. Tyrion explains that because his body is twisted and weak, he must rely on his mind, and that a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone. When Jon asks what Tyrion is reading, Tyrion begins to explain about dragons and how he fantasized about them as a child when feeling resentful towards his family. When Tyrion goes so far as to suggest that Jon must feel resentment towards his own family, Jon protests. However, Tyrion continues to push the issue, sarcastically describing how Lady Catelyn treats him as one of her own, how Robb is kind because he is the heir, and how Eddard Stark must have had good reason to pack Jon off to the wall. When Jon replies that the Night's Watch is a noble calling, Tyrion describes the watch as a meeting heap for the realm's debtors, poachers, rapers, thieves, and bastards, all kept busy watching for imaginary grumpkins and snarks. When Jon asks him to stop, Tyrion realizes what he has been saying and feels badly. Reaching out to comfort Jon, he is attacked and knocked down by Jon's direwolf ghost. Unable to get up on his own, Tyrion is forced to apologize to Jon before receiving help. When Tyrion questions why the wolf attacked, Jon jokes that Ghost must have mistaken Tyrion for a grumpkin, which amuses them both. Having calmed down, Jon asks Tyrion if the things he said of the Night's Watch are true. When Tyrion says yes, Jon accepts the truth grimly. The 2 share some wine and return to camp for a supper of squirrel stew. Tyrion is the last to retire, and Jon has the first watch. 8 days after Eddard and the others have left Winterfell, Catelyn is still sitting at Bran's bedside in her fragile mental state. Maester Luwin comes to her to tell her how much the king's visit has cost them, but Catelyn is not interested in looking at figures. Regardless, the Maester continues to speak of replacing provisions. Catelyn insists that the steward can worry about such matters. Maester reminds her that the steward went south with Lord Eddard and needs to be replaced, along with a number of other positions. Catelyn is outraged that he can think of such trivial things when Bran is dying until Robb arrives to take charge of the appointments. After the Maester leaves, Robb asks Catelyn what she thinks she's doing spending all her time with Bran and not even saying farewell to her own family. Catelyn insists she can't bear to be away from Bran in case he should die. Robb assures her that Bran is not going to die and reminds her that her other children need her too. He goes on to explain that Rickon just follows him around crying all day, thinking everyone has abandoned him. Robb hears a direwolf howling outside and opens the window, explaining that the sound seems to be good for Bran. When the other direwolves join in, Catelyn screams for Robb to make the noise stop and then collapses to the floor. Robb helps her up, but she only begins screaming again. Then Robb notices the dogs barking as well and sees the library tower afire. When Robb rushes off to fight the fire, Catelyn remains behind with Bran. When she turns away from the window, however, she is face to face with the filthy man brandishing a knife. The man claims that Catelyn was not supposed to be there and moves towards Bran, claiming that killing him would be a mercy. Catelyn attempts to scream for help, but the man is too quick as he moves to slit her throat. Catelyn manages to grab the blade with her hands and push it away, cutting her fingers badly. She bites the man's hands and fights her way free. The man is about to attack her again when Bran's direwolf leaps onto him and rips out his throat. Once the man is dead, the wolf settles down on Bran's bed. Catelyn is taken back to her chambers. Old Nan undresses her and helps her into a bath. After the bath, Maester Luwin dresses Catelyn's wounds. Her fingers are cut almost to the bone, and the man has pulled out a handful of hair. The Maester gives her milk of the poppy, which puts her to sleep. She wakes up 4 days later. It seems like a nightmare, but the pain in her hands reminds her that it was real. When Catelyn remembers her behavior since Bran's fall, she is ashamed, promising herself that it will not happen again. Robb, now wearing armor and a sword, comes to see her with Theon Greyjoy, Roderick Cassel, and Hallis Mullen, the new captain of the guard. Mullen tells her that nobody knows who the man was, but he had likely been lurking in the stables since the king's visit. Where the man has been hiding, they found 90 silver stags hidden under the straw. When Robb asks why anybody would want to kill Bran, Catelyn insists that as a lord he must learn to answer his own questions. Robb guesses that somebody is afraid of what Bran might do or say if he wakes up, and so posts a heavy guard on Bran. Sir Roderick points out that the dagger used by the assassin is a Valyrian steel blade with a dragon bone handle, is a much finer weapon than anything a low-born footpad should have possessed. Someone must have given it to him. Catelyn tells Roderick, Theon, and Robb in strict confidence of her sister's suspicions about the death of Jon Arryn. She reminds them that Jaime Lannister did not go hunting with the others the day Bran fell, and that she does not believe that Bran fell, but he was pushed. The group admits that this is a reasonable conclusion. However, Maester Luwin points out that all they have is conjecture, and that they must have proof or else keep silent. After some deliberation, Catelyn decides that she and Sir Roderick will go to King's Landing by ship to inform Eddard, hopefully arriving ahead of the king's party. Sansa is having breakfast with Septa Mordane in an inn near the Trident. When Sansa feeds her direwolf lady under the table, the Septa says that although Sansa is a good girl, she is as willful as her sister Arya when it comes to her direwolf. The Septa informs Sansa that they have been invited to ride in the wheelhouse with Queen Cersei and Princess Myrcella. Sansa has been looking forward to this for a week, hoping for a chance to be with Prince Joffrey. Joffrey is everything she ever wanted her prince to be like, tall and strong and handsome. The one thing Sansa is afraid of is that Arya will ruin everything for her. Septa Mordane wants Sansa and Arya to dress well for the event, and Sansa has already decided on a fine silk dress. She does not expect Arya to wear anything appropriate. Sansa begs to be excused so she can look for Arya. She finds Arya on the banks of the Trident trying to comb the mud out of her direwolf Nymeria's fur. Arya is not interested in riding in the wheelhouse and intends to go riding with Micah to look for rubies in the river. Sansa insists that there is no fun in riding because there is nothing to see, but Arya is fascinated by all the new flowers and landmarks and people they are seeing along the way. Sansa informs Arya that she has to come, asking why anyone would want to ride a stinky horse when they could ride in the wheelhouse on pillows while eating lemon cakes and keeping company with the queen. Arya replies that she does not even like the queen and still intends to go riding. Sansa, giving up, leaves, but Arya yells after her that Lady will not be allowed in the wheelhouse, which leaves Sansa speechless. When she nears the camp, Sansa sees a crowd gathered around the wheelhouse. The council has sent an honor guard from King's Landing to accompany them the rest of the way. The party includes 2 knights in fine armor, a strong man in white armor, and a beautiful young man in green armor. There is also a gaunt, grim man that Sansa finds so terrifying that she backs into Sandor Clegane. Sansa kneels and hugs Lady, and next thing she knows, the 2 new arrivals are standing above her. Joffrey explains that the terrifying man is Sir Ilan Payne, the King's Justice, the royal executioner. The White Knight then introduces himself as Sir Barristan Selmy, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, but the Green Knight insists that she guess. Based on his age and his antlered helm, Sansa correctly deduces him to be the king's youngest brother, Lord Renly Baratheon. Feeling more comfortable, Sansa apologizes to Sir Ilan Payne, but the man does not speak. Once he has left, Joffrey explained that his tongue was ripped out by Mad King Aerys. The queen says that she must speak with the counselors and therefore must postpone the day with Myrcella. Instead, she asks Joffrey to entertain their guests. Sansa is overjoyed with the idea of a whole day with Joffrey. Sansa offers to do whatever the prince wants, and when Joffrey suggests they go riding, Sansa gushes that she loves riding. Joffrey then suggests that it would be best to leave Lady and his dog, Sandor Clegane, behind. When Sansa questions leaving Clegane behind, Joffrey brandishes his sword, Lion's Tooth. They ride along the river, exploring the countryside, until they draw near to the battlefield where King Robert defeated Rhaegar Targaryen. Then they hear an odd sound like wooden clattering coming from nearby. In a nearby clearing, they find a boy and a girl play fighting with sticks. The boy, taller and older than the girl, is winning. When the girl is disarmed by a smack of the hand, Sansa recognizes her as Arya. Joffrey laughs, and the boy, a butcher's boy named Micah, drops his stick. Joffrey begins to taunt Micah and challenges him to a fight, sword against stick. Micah insists that Arya ask him to fight her, which Sansa quickly realizes is the truth. Joffrey remains oblivious, however, and goes as far as to prick the boy's cheek with his sword. Arya picks up her stick and tells Joffrey to leave Micah alone. Joffrey insists that he will not hurt Micah much. Without warning, Arya breaks her stick over the back of Joffrey's head. Micah runs away while an enraged Joffrey staggers but manages to catch a second blow from Arya on his sword, knocking the splintered stick from her hand. Ignoring Sansa's screams for them to stop, Arya throws a rock and hits Joffrey's horse, driving it away. Joffrey chases Arya with his sword until she is backed up against a tree. Suddenly, Nymeria appears, savaging Joffrey's sword arm and forcing him to drop his sword. Arya calls Nymeria off and picks up Lion's Tooth, while Joffrey lies whimpering on the ground. The prince pleads to Arya not to hurt him. Arya throws the sword into the river before running off with Nymeria. Once Arya is gone, Sansa goes to help Joffrey tenderly, but he snarls at her to leave and not touch him, and Sansa sees the contempt in his eyes. After 4 days of searching, Vayon Pool comes to Ned with news that Arya has been found unharmed. Ned is relieved that it was Jory Cassell who found her rather than Queen Cersei's men. Unfortunately, the Lannister guards at the gate informed the Queen, who had Arya brought directly before King Robert. Ned rushes to the audience chamber at nearby Castle Derry, which has been hosting the King's party during the search. He is dismayed to find the chamber full of people, preventing a private and amicable solution. Ned also notes that very few in the crowd are likely to be sympathetic to the Starks. Most are either Lannister men or loyal to the local Lord Raymond Derry, a prominent Targaryen loyalist who lost family and fortune at the Trident. However, Ned is relieved that neither Jaime Lannister nor Sandor Clegane are present. Arya apologizes to Ned profusely as she cries. Ned turns angrily to the king, demanding to know why Arya was not brought to him first. King Cersei bristles at his tone, but Robert apologizes, explaining that he only wanted to finish the business quickly. Cersei then accuses Arya and Micah of ambushing Joffrey with clubs while setting Nymeria to tear off his arm. When Joffrey affirms this, Arya calls him a liar. After the king has listened to Arya's side of the story, Lord Renly begins snickering and asks Joffrey how a skinny 9-year-old girl managed to disarm him with a broom handle. When Joffrey recounts a very different story, King Robert is exasperated. Ned reminds the king that Sansa was also present and has Sansa brought in to testify. However, Sansa, torn between her family and her love for Joffrey, claims she doesn't remember. This infuriates Arya, who lunges at Sansa. Cersei uses this as an example of how wild Arya is and insists she wants Arya punished. King Robert, even more exasperated, orders Ned to discipline Arya while he disciplines Joffrey. Unsatisfied, Cersei demands that Nymeria be killed and offers 100 gold dragons for her pelt. However, since Nymeria has disappeared, Cersei demands the skin of the other direwolf. When Ned protests, Robert only responds that a direwolf is not a pet and that the girl would be happier with a dog. Sansa finally realizes that they are talking about her direwolf and goes crying to Ned. In a final attempt to save the direwolf, Ned insists that the king execute the wolf himself, but Robert only walks away. Ned refuses to let Ilyn Payne do the task. When Cersei voices suspicion about Ned's intentions, Ned replies that the direwolf is from the north and deserves better than a butcher. With Sansa's cries in his ears, Ned goes to Lady. As he sits beside the wolf waiting for his sword, Ned considers the names his children chose for their wolves and finds that Sansa chose a good name for her well-behaved wolf. After the deed is done, Ned commands 4 guardsmen to return Lady's body to Winterfell for burial, insisting that Cersei will never have her skin. As he is returning, Sandor Clegane and his riders come back from the hunt. Clegane states that while they didn't find Arya, they did find her pet and drops a corpse at Ned's feet. As he bends to uncover the corpse, Ned wonders how he will tell Arya. However, rather than Nymeria, the body turns out to be Arya's friend Micah, cut down from horseback. When Ned states that Clegane ran the boy down, the burnt man responds, "He ran, but not very fast." Well, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below. I will be doing a Q&A at the end of the month for the entire book, so please leave your questions down below so that I can compile them if you want them answered. Again, thank you so much for stopping by. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and please subscribe to come back for more. Thanks again. Bye.